As most of you know by now, our dear friend Jade West passed away yesterday, leaving us all tremendously affected by her loss. Jade transcended differing opinions and was grounding the rod of morality, kindness, and sanity for many of us across many platforms and differences. Jade epitomized wisdom and kindness and will always be beloved and respected by us all. She will be extremely missed, and this show is dedicated to her.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to NonSequitur. I'm Kyle Curtis, joined by Steve McRae. Dave is producing, and we have Rick Yifrach. I got it right this time. Back with us. Welcome, Rick. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming back. It's good to see you again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Welcome back.
Absolutely. We're going to go through a couple of announcements real quick, and then we have a huge announcement to follow. So let's get right into it, and then we'll get on with the coins like we didn't get to last time because we got Steve and I asked way too many questions, but we're going to try to behave tonight so that the story can be told. So let's go ahead and throw up what we've got coming up tomorrow. That's going to be Jay Dyer and Mr. Atheist. We will be going through esoteric Hollywood, the symbols that are hidden in Hollywood movies. That's tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern. Jay Dyer, Mr. Atheist. And then on Friday, we have Nightmare Fuel. Fantastic content creator. He will be joining us at 8 p.m. And I think that, Rick, you wanted to kind of say something about Nightmare Fuel, right?
Yeah, he's one of my favorites, Reese. I don't think he knows me, though. I've left him a few messages here and there on YouTube. But you guys really need to tune in. You should really listen to this guy. He's got some very unique perspectives politically, and I think that everybody will be a better person for listening in on his point of views and hearing what he has to say. He is really great. Reese, love you, man. You're the best.
Excellent endorsement for Nightmare Fuel. So that's Friday at 8 p.m. Okay, and then Saturday, we will have Russell Glazer from the Atheist Experience. He will be joining us, and interestingly enough, we will also be joined by our favorite 22-year-old deaf to homos and children, Matthew Powell. He will be
weird.
I know it does sound weird, but did I say anything? Did I say anything untrue there, Steve?
Deaf to what?
No, it just sounded awkward.
Deaf
Our
to homos
favorite
and children.
pastor that wants deaf to children.
Oh, the favorite part. Yeah, that did sound weird.
Yeah.
But yes, these two gentlemen will be sitting down with us. So don't miss that on Saturday. That is at 8 o'clock Eastern also. Okay, so let me preface this by saying that I want to give a huge thank you to our favorite truth hammer, Caitlin Chloe. She worked today to kind of pull the strings that made what I'm about to say possible. And this is going to be a show that you cannot absolutely miss. I am happy, and Steve is happy, and David is happy to announce that next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we will be having a discussion with Sargon of Akkad and Brittany Simon on social justice. It is a show that you cannot. See, I'm already getting excited. Social justice and intersectionality.
Wow.
They both will be joining us at 8 Eastern. Interestingly enough, that Wednesday before, so next Wednesday, we've got Richard Carrier that will also be joining us, not for the Sargon show, but the day before. These two guys are going to be debating at MythCon. So we're doing kind of a homage to MythCon here, where you'll have them back to back. So Richard Carrier on the 13th, and then it's hard to believe, but Sargon of Akkad and Brittany Simon both will be here next Thursday at 8 o'clock. So do not miss that.
That's next level stuff right there, man.
I'm excited. I think this is going to be fantastic. Whether you like Sargon or not, he's interesting to hear his view on things. He's not one of those that kind of just says what he. Yeah, he is. He is. So I'm very excited. We are thankful, and again, Caitlin, Chloe, thank you so much for helping us make this happen. She will also be with us during that debate as our guest moderator. So do not miss that show. It's going to be fantastic. Okay, a lot of extremes tonight. You know, just a lot of highs and lows on tonight's show. So
a lot of emotion going on.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's okay. That's okay. I
think so too.
That's part of life. It's part of life. If anybody's wondering, just kind of touch base on what Steve said at the beginning, we will be having a show for Jade on Sunday. I forgot to tell Steve to mention that. That's why I'm kind of cutting back to that just for a second, but more on that to come. Okay, Rick, I'm going to let you introduce yourself again in case anybody didn't catch was it last week when you were on?
It was last week, yeah.
Okay. It feels so much longer, but just because Sunday's show, I think, kicked us back 2 weeks, Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah. But welcome back.
Let me just start. Thank you. Let me just start by saying it's once again an honor to be here. And Kyle, Steve, you guys you're wonderful. I love you guys. I love your show. Love everything you do, and I believe in this show. And I want to give a shout out to the Daves that don't get enough credit. Well, maybe they do, but fantastic guy. There's two Daves I learned today, but really great people. And basically, a little background on myself. I'm an ancient numismatist, which means somebody that deals in ancient coins. Primarily what I do is I restore and clean and bring something that was 2,000 years old and found in the ground back to life again, and I make it look like it did 2,000 years ago, which is not easy to do. It's done under a microscope, or done with chemicals and things like that. And the beautiful thing about ancient coins is they were the original memes of their times. They were the newspapers of their days. They were something that if you wanted to know what was going on in a particular year at a specific time, you could look at the money of that day and know who ruled the world, who as an empire did, who as an individual did. And there's a lot of things that go into understanding these things, but we can really focus in on specific times, specific places with coins and know exactly what was going on in the world at that time.
Rick, do you wish that they still did that, like post what's going on in the world today on coins? Because wouldn't it be awesome to see how they captured Kanye West crazy on a coin?
That's fantastic. Yes and no. I mean, here's the thing is, Rome was able to use it for propaganda, right? To really tell the people, hey, the gods are behind this man, the gods are behind Hadrian. The gods are behind Trajan or Constantine. But it's a little bit different when you get into let's say the Greek world, where they said they were before the Romans, and they said we want to show off our artistry, our philosophy. This is where our brains are developed. It was a different type of way of communicating a picture, a puzzle unto the world. And do I wish they could still do that today? Man, if it was my message that was being sent out and sort of told to all the people, then yes. But if it was my enemy's message, I wouldn't want that. So I think that the best thing to say is no. The way that we're doing money now is the best way to do it, and we keep the propaganda out of it that way. And what
So
I'm
no
hoping to cover
Yeezy.
today is some of the propaganda that was actually used in the coins.
So
Awesome.
the propaganda was used to promote an agenda?
Oh yeah, I mean all the time,
Like fake,
especially the
fake
Romans.
news? Awesome.
Fake news, real news. I mean, absolutely. You can do anything. Once it's stamped in metal, it's official. And we'll see that in the start with the well, not so much maybe in the start, but we'll see that as we go along. But we're going to start with the 30 pieces of silver, the Judas coin. And let me know.
Everybody was so mad last time too, Rick. By the way, I got so many comments about how they wished Steve and I would have just shut up and let you get to the 30 pieces thing. So here you go, haters.
Show today, right?
we wouldn't have made it. And by the way, I just want you guys to look at your left-hand corner there where you do see a picture of Steve and his profile, which I had said was absolutely wonderful for a coin. And
Kyle did a brilliant job on that. That even impressed me.
It almost didn't happen. I sent Steve a message and I said, I need a picture of you from the side. He says, I don't feel like it right now. I'll do it tomorrow. And when I do it tomorrow means that just forget about it. And then I told him, I said, well, I need to put you on a coin. And it's a totally different story then. Okay, hold on 1 second. Does this look okay? How about this side?
Not quite how it went down, but it's okay.
It looks great.
Well,
Steven, yeah,
it looks like an actual relief. I mean, it looks like raised. I mean, it looks three-dimensional even, kind of. Doesn't it?
Absolutely. Kyle, that's you on the right?
I'm in the middle.
Oh, yeah, I'm in the middle. The middle.
That's supposed to be funny.
It's my right.
He's not the nun.
It's my right. Yeah, you look you look fabulous.
I could be. I mean.
All right.
Kyle with a pompadour.
So let's get started. If hopefully I'm looking at the same screen you guys are, because that is a picture of Melkart on the left and an eagle on the right, and it's silver. That's what you're seeing, right?
Yep.
A man's profile on the left. So you can even see he's got the little, what the Jews call the pass, a little curly hair there. What were the 30 pieces of silver? What was it a lot of money for Judas? And how much would it be worth? I mean, these are the questions that I think inquiring minds want to know, right? And those are the questions I want to answer. And the 30 pieces of silver, it could be 30 pieces of anything, right? It could be 30 pieces of copper, bronze, anything, but it was 30 pieces of silver. And there were different, especially we could talk about three different types of silver. There was a dram, and we're going, if you might have heard it called the drachma, which is, these are Greek terms. And there was a diadram, which was a 2 drachma piece, dram. And there was a tetradrachma, the tetradram, which was 4 drams. And we know that that's what Judas got. He got 30 pieces of tetradrams. And so each coin was worth 4 drams. How much was that worth? What could he have bought with that? That's what I think people have been trying to figure out for a long time. And we know what that could have bought. Well, we somewhat know. It's very difficult to place this amount on modern day money because things are different today than they were back then. But 30 tetradrams would have been about 120 days worth of work without a break. So maybe half a year's salary, right? It's a lot of money. But you have to take into consideration a few things. Labor was very cheap. Slave labor was a thing. There were more slaves in many cities than there were actual citizens. So 30 pieces of silver wouldn't have bought maybe necessarily what you and me would want, the things that you need to get by on, which is food, which is shelter. Well, maybe it could have bought some shelter, but it would have represented land more than anything. It would have represented land. You could buy a lot of land and you could buy a lot of slave labor. I think that Judas
Can I ask
gets
you
a bad rap. Yes, of course.
what would that be worth, like, in terms of an actual monetary value now? Is there any way to discern that?
There is, and I've written it down.
Oh, awesome.
Till today, if somebody asked that question on Reddit a few years ago, and I tried to break it down. And it was really difficult to do because there was so much to break down. So I wrote this. A drachma, or a denarius, which is, again, the coin that you're seeing is what Judas was paid in. We know that for a fact. The coin that you're seeing is what Judas would have been paid 30 of. It was worth about $201.04 in today's money. One of those. So
What?
30 pieces of those, yeah. 30 pieces, but again, you have to take in for labor was very cheap, food was very expensive. Things cost different things back then than they do now. So it was a lot of money. And look, I'd written down a bunch of stuff, pages of these things, trying to figure out exactly what it would have cost. And if you do a Google search, it says about $600, but that's completely wrong. Completely wrong. That's 10%
so each coin
of what it
was
was worth.
the $100, the $120. Each coin was worth that much.
Each coin would have been
Not a
four.
total.
Each piece of silver would have been about 4 days worth of labor or wage for an average soldier. So think a soldier got that was the midline. That was a midway to say, okay, how much should a person get paid for making pots, for making spears, for making shields? A soldier's pay was the median. And this is 4 days' wage. One of these coins that you're seeing on your screen right now is 4 days of wage. There was 1/4 of these pieces called a drachma or a Roman denarius, same thing. These are 4 of them, and he got paid 30 of these. And if
so about $1,700.
About $6,000 for 30 pieces.
Now, what
Would
is that in
you
Bitcoin?
betray? It depends on when you're talking.
Horrible, man.
Let me see. Yeah, I mean, depending on, look, there's a lot of factors to take in. It's not something that's so simply calculated, and anybody that you ask will come up with a different number. Ancient coins is what I happen to deal in. It's where my expertise lies. And my number, if I had to put my 2 cents in, would lie about $5,500 to $6,000 in today's money. So it costs $6,000 to betray Jesus. That's about what it cost. It wouldn't have bought you much, but it would have got you a lot of land. It would have got you a lot of labor. Maybe not as much food as you want. But look, I have a soft spot in my heart for Judas. I'll say that. And as crazy as that sounds, he's been taunted as the villain, right? Throughout the time that Christianity has sort of ruled and reigned. Because he was Jesus's most beloved. He was Jesus's most trusted. And he was different from all the other disciples in that all the other disciples, 100% of them, were fishermen. Judas Iscariot was not a fisherman. As a matter of fact, and I had a conversation about this very topic with my dad. We're both Hebrew speakers. Ishkariot is how you say Iscariot in Hebrew. Ishkariot translates to the man of the city. Ish meaning person, Kariot meaning city. A lot of people will say Iscariot means the man of the dagger. If you watch documentaries, they'll say that, right? Because the Sakari, you'll see movies that will talk about that, but that's not it. It was Ishkariot, the man of the city. So all these other guys were country folk. They were fishermen. And then you have Judas, who was a man of the city, who joined and was part of the 12 disciples. He was something that stood out. And I don't know that he was necessarily the bad guy until later on in Christianity. And that's what's
Well,
interesting
I
about
want to tell
him.
you, Rick. I want to tell you, I don't think I'm with you. Now, all this, of course, is predicated on the fact that it's a real story. Of course, I'm talking about it from if I'm in their shoes and consider, the story plausible or possible. But let's say that it did
Sure.
happen. It's hard for me to understand where you would pass the blame off on him if all of this was foretold and he was the reason that ultimately led to what redeemed the world.
Sure.
He made a
He
human.
could he
He
can
made a
almost
human.
be he can almost be somebody
But
that helped in that sense.
yeah,
Well, he was part of
yeah,
God's
absolutely.
plan. He was part of God's plan, right? Without Judas, none of this would have happened, right? There would have been no Christendom. There
Right.
would have been no
Very
atonement.
true.
There would have been no sacrifice. I mean, he was instrumental in God's plan in that narrative, was he not?
He was. I mean, that's a really good observation. I mean, and that's an observation that people have made before, and that I believe I've made as well. Think of it this way: all the names of the disciples were changed except for Judas's. Right? There is no Hebrew name for James. Right? James's name was Yaakov. Was Jacob. His name changed because King James, that wrote the King James Bible, added his name to Jacob. All the disciples had very Hebrew names, and suddenly they have Greek names. The only name that stayed the same was Judas, right? The Jew from Judea.
Interesting.
And that was used, his betrayal and his love for money and his greed, even though he committed suicide over the fact that he couldn't handle turning over his Messiah. That was used for centuries to sort of placate, to sort of give a certain people from a certain group a what's the word?
Cover.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Rick. While you look for that, just because I'm curious, do
Go ahead.
you believe that there was actually like money exchanged for a person with named Jesus? Like, I'm not. I know that you don't you don't follow the Christian story, but like, do you believe that actually took place? If Jesus was a real
Well,
person and just happened to.
so you're asking if I'm a mythicist or do I believe that a person named Jesus existed? And if you had asked me
Yeah,
4 or 5 years ago, I would have said I'm a mythicist. But being in the field that I'm in with ancient coins and everything like that, if you wanted to create a mythological character, a mythological person for everybody to worship, you could have came up with a much better story than Jesus. The story of Jesus has too many problems and too many holes in it that need to be corrected and need to be explained to him have not been an actual person, because you could create a much more tangible story, much more perfect story.
interesting.
So I
Yeah, well,
think that
even in mythicism, it's only a one-third chance he didn't exist, right? I mean, that's not really a high probability. I mean, at least
that's
you go
Richard
by
Carrier.
Bayesian analysis that Richard did. Yeah, that's Richard Carey's approach, right? Is 1/3 chance he didn't exist, 2/3 against. Those aren't really that great odds, to be honest with you. So I'm not a mythicist. I'm fine with the historical record of some existence of some person named Jesus that some way is a kernel of what a lot of this surrounds upon. I'm okay with that. But I can go either way, to be honest with you.
It doesn't matter because he's already believed in. I mean, I think that's the way that I see it. Is it doesn't matter if he
Sure.
existed or not. But if he were to exist, if I were to say, let's create a mythical figure from scratch right now that will fall into what the biblical notion of a mythical figure should be, I wouldn't have him die on a cross. I wouldn't have him saying, Father, forgive them. I wouldn't say, why hast thou forsaken me? I would need to come up with explanations for all these things if I did create a mythical figure that sort of took that path. And we've
Maybe that's
had
just
to
what they
create, I mean,
Rick.
sorry?
Maybe that's just what they want you to think. Maybe they designed it so poorly on purpose so that it would look like.
You're starting to sound like the flat earthers now. Come on, Kyle.
It's just like the Sphinx, Rick. It's just like the Sphinx.
You're still wrong on that, but that's another conversation for another time.
Fair enough.
Look, I think that there really was a person named, Yeshua, that we've named Jesus. And you had the Jehovah's Witness on here the other day, and that drove me crazy that they think Jehovah is the real name of God, where it's a complete derivative of, Yahweh. And it was it was that the linguistic tricks and turns that they pull are another incredible thing in themselves.
You don't
But,
think Jesus
yeah, I
came
think
here in
that-
1916?
Say it again.
You don't think Jesus came back in 1916 to divulge
I mean,
some
in
knowledge?
1922, 1938, 1944, 1965, 1972.
After that,
There's
he
a
was
good
like,
chance
"Oh,
for me to give
dude,
a shout out to my friend Alfred, who's a Jehovah's Witness. Hey, Alfred.
I've lived through like 75 raptures and cataclysmic events. So just saying, Jesus was supposed to come back numerous times. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here's the thing: he's not going to come back. It's not going to come back. All we can do is try to put the story together as best as we can. Coins are a great way of doing that, and that's where my job is. So we have these pieces, these 30 pieces of silver. We have Judas Iscariot, the man of the city. And I think he's been given a bad rap. And his name just happens to be Judas. And it was all these things that were, taken in that he's a perfect villain. Let's put it that way. If we can go on to the next things I want to get through. Oh, look, this coin that just came up right now. This is from the year 33 AD. This is the year Jesus was crucified. You can see it's not as perfect. You can see the face is more down on the bottom. It's not perfectly struck. Most coins were not perfectly struck. They looked more like this did. But this is a coin that was struck on that year of crucifixion, which was, I believe, October of Nisan, which is a Hebrew month, if I'm not mistaken.
What would something like that be worth now from that particular year? Like
from that year, that year is a very sought after. So that coin was minted for about 80 years, right? And you can get it in any year, and you could pay anywhere, depending on condition, from about $100 to about 2,000 to 3,000. And this one, because it has the year actually on the reverse, it's written in Greek letters. It's a different calendar than we know, but this is 33 AD. This is the year of the crucifixion. So that's why I brought it up. It's the same coin as was on the last, but you'll pay about 2,000, 2,500 for something like that in today's money.
And how many? Do you know about how many of those are like in circulation or like
thousands
still exist now? Really?
Thousands. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thousands. They find them in big hordes usually. Sometimes they're found individually, but coins are something that are found in huge amounts, in gigantic amounts.
If you were like in that area and you did happen to be somewhere and I don't know, you were digging or something and you have to find one of these, I mean, are these things that you become yours if you find them, or are they somehow like part of the government of that area that for any kind of find like that?
That's a good question. I've found them before, right? That's how I got started. If my uncle didn't keep the coin that he had, I never would have become obsessed with ancient coins. He had to hand it right over to the authorities. The collectors that exist today wouldn't collect, and the people that have figured out so much of what we have figured out through the history of coins, it would be a spectrum of knowledge that would be missing today. So you can keep them. There are places that if you find a hoard of gold coins, let's say, find a jug that was hidden 2,000 years ago and it had 50 gold coins in, technically, yes, you should hand it into the government. but they will take it from you, and you will never see anything of it again. And it might go into a museum. It might just be taken by somebody else and sold, and you're just the sucker. But there are so many of them that there are enough ancient coins for everybody to own a handful of them in the world. Maybe not in the world, but
Wow,
you know,
that many.
anybody that's interested in them. There are that many.
I was
Look, they were made over
I was thinking,
thousands of years.
I was thinking earlier today
Wow.
that, like, in preparation for this show, like, what kind of coin or bill would Donald Trump, if he ever was, eventually be on? And I finally came up with the answer of what they would put him on.
Well, let's hear it.
An IOU.
They didn't have them back
It's
then,
so-
as long as far as I know, but that's good.
It's so weird that these were so common, yet if it wasn't for you, Rick, I would have never seen one of these before. I would have never laid eyes upon something
Steve,
like
I'm here
this
to
before.
spread the word, my friend.
I feel so
I'm here to
stupid. You
spread the
don't even know. It's like you don't even know what you don't even know on some of these things, right? It's like I've been exposed to stuff that's like, wow, this shit is freaking cool. I never would have ever seen anything like this, and yet here he is. Oh,
The
they're just
inner
ubiquitous. Everybody has handfuls of them.
No, absolutely. Listen, what I said last time at the beginning of the show was one day my dad brought me home a book about ancient coins, and I told him in my lifetime at some point I will own one of these. And I had no idea how accessible they were. And now I have drawers with hundreds, maybe even 1,000 of them. And by the way, Kyle, I owe you some ancient coins, and I have them set aside, and they are going to be mailed to you this week.
Hell yeah!
Didn't want to forget about that.
I'm excited. I'm gonna place them in a shadow box right behind me.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the next coin. All right. So we're talking about coins that are in the Bible right now. So this is the tribute penny. So second emperor of Rome on the left-hand side, which is Tiberius. As you can see on the bottom right-hand corner, TI stands for Tiberius, then CAESAR, Caesar. Tiberius, Caesar, Divi, Augustus. This is also mentioned in the Bible. In the New Testament, they hand a coin to Jesus and they ask him, is it okay to pay taxes? And he looks at this coin and he says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And this is the coin that he's holding. And we know that because this is a coin that circulated right at that time. This is the only coin that would have had the image of an emperor at that time. And this is basically what would have been handed to Jesus. It's about the size of an American penny, just done in silver. I think that's the best way to put it. And that is the one. And there's one more biblical coin. If we're done with that, we can go to the next. Love that. All right, so this is a whole lot, right? Brought my Bible out for this. Luke. You remember the parable of the widow giving up the 2 mites? I'll read it to you.
Indeed.
So this is Luke chapter 21, verse 1. And he looked up and saw the rich putting in their gifts into the treasury. And he saw a certain poor woman putting in 2 small copper coins. And he said, this is quoting Jesus, truly I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all of them, for they all out of their surplus put into the offering, but she put out of her poverty, put in all that she had to live on. Sorry if I messed that up. But basically, when you talk about something that is common and that anybody can own and can own for a very little amount, these things are found in the tens of thousands. I've seen bucketfuls of these. They're tiny little copper coins that Jesus spoke about in a parable. And we call it the widow's mite. If you want to see a nice example of it, go to the next picture. You see a star on one side and an anchor on the next. And
awesome.
yeah, these are coins. Actually, I should probably shout out, if I can, one of my favorite guys, Perry Siegel from HeraclesCoins.com. Anybody's interested in owning one of these, they're very affordable and very cool to have. And they make one of the best Christmas presents you can imagine. They probably run around $20, $30, $40, depending on the condition of them. They can get up to 200.
I mean, they look like they've been flattened and well used, or just that's how they were. Or?
They were these particular ones. They needed to make an enormous amount of them, right? So they were worth very little, and when they molded the blanks for them, they made a bunch of them in a row, and kind of hard to explain, but they would make them in a line and strike each one individually and push in the line as they're going. And you can see on the top of the left-hand side where a coin would have been cut off from the next coin. And on the bottom, you can see where it would have been cut off from its predecessor. So these would have just been made in a huge line and bang, 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 struck and pushed in. So they needed to make a bunch of them. These sorry, my friend Brian.
Oh, that's cool. Hey,
these
Brian.
would have been made. These would have been made in huge amounts, in gigantic quantities, and once in a great while, you would get a perfect one like this. And this one you will pay a lot more for in today's money than you would for just those one. This is one out of maybe 1,000 comes out beautiful like this. But they were worth very little. And that's the.
Is it true? Is it true? Like, just real quick, because it has to do with that. Like, is it like the buffalo pennies or the nickels? I mean, that have the Indian head on it and the buffalo on the reverse. Is it true that there is like some coins that have like a leg backwards, or it's upside down?
Missing leg.
I heard. Okay.
Three-legged buffalo penny, three-legged buffalo nickel. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I listen, shit, I have no idea if that's real or not. I saw that episode of Silver Spoons when I was a kid. If you remember that show. And they talked about it, and that's all I know about it.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Is there really such
nickels? There might be. I mean, there's some weird nickels out there. There's some weird pennies out there too that, for whatever reason, whenever they were minted at a certain place, they were worth an exceptional amount of money. Now, it's funny, as I've always thought to myself, at one time, most of us probably have held something worth quite a bit of bank and not ever realized. Like, I had a $20 bill one time that was double struck. I sold it for $40 to a collector.
I got a dollar bill once at Toys R Us. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I got a dollar bill once at Toys R Us, a $1 bill that I noticed the numbers on them were printed diagonally. And I just kept it and put it aside. And then eBay was invented, and I put it on eBay and I sold it for $200. So, I mean, that happens. But with ancient coins, it's different. Yeah, crazy. It's called a third print error. Say what?
Say what? What you talking about, girl? What is the kind of error? Is it a double?
It's called a third print error. But here, like with ancient coins, there are so many errors and there are so many mistakes because no two are alike, right? I mean, because every one is done with human error in it. It's, the strike is done with a different amount of strength. The metal might be heated to a different temperature. The blank, the flan was cut differently. So no two are alike. So if you have an ancient coin and you take a picture of it and you keep a record of it, you'll never have to worry about, hey, if somebody steals this and it goes on the market again, I will be able to trace exactly my coin to where it was, let's say, hypothetically stolen and taken to, because no two are alike. No two are exactly alike. That's the difference with today's money. Back then, everything was an error. None of them, there was no consistency done with the coins. No two
How
are
easy
alike.
was it to counterfeit? And how do you distinguish now what was counterfeit and what wasn't back then?
A better question is, how do you distinguish what is counterfeit now and what is not counterfeit?
What was the
But
penalty
back
for
then,
counterfeiting?
yes, nothing. There's counterfeits done all the time. I mean, in ancient counterfeits now are done all the time. Back then, the penalty was death.
Okay.
I don't know how much longer we have, and that's the thing, because we are going to get into what the Jews did in Judea, which was to actually strike money over Roman money, strike their own images and their own propaganda messages over Roman money. And the only problem that I have is that I don't know if we're going to have enough time to get into that, because that's a story in itself. What do you guys think?
I think we are going to go wherever you want to go, Rick. We ended last time because we had that second show, but this is all you tonight. So if you want to plow through it, we're going to do it.
All right, let's try it. So, if it's cool with you guys, this time I'm doing a lot of the talking. I hope that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we're trying to be silent on purpose, so that you can actually get to the story you meant to last time.
All right. Do you have any questions about Judas Iscariot before we end?
I don't think so. Steve, do you?
No, I'm good to go. Except, how do you pronounce it again in Hebrew? I'm going to get that down. It's
Ishkariot.
Ishkariot.
Ishkariot. Very good. Man
sexy,
of the city. Man of the city. So, who's handling the folders, Dave?
Yes.
Folder 3, picture number 10. We're going to go through Julius Caesar and Brutus real quick, since we did call this Judas to Brutus.
I thought you liked that.
I loved it, man. I loved it. The
and all my
creativity that flows out of your mind, Kyle, is second to none.
It's frightening.
Oh man, I mean, it's really funny because you guys entertain me on a daily basis, and here I am on the show. It's mind blowing, and I'm not a social media guy. I stay in my room, I stay in my house, and do my ancient coin thing, and I don't talk to people. But it's really an honor to be here. I just need to remind.
I don't know if I'm flattered or I should be concerned, Rick.
Yeah, but a little bit of both. I'm going to go with both. More flattered than concerned. There's a little bit of concern there. Yeah.
I'm going to apologize in advance.
I appreciate the concern.
It worries me sometimes when people say awesome, like for Sunday show, when they're like, "Oh, that was fantastic." Like, I can understand them saying it for like something like this. That's actually, you're going to walk away and learn something. But those that thank you for putting them through 2 hours of just torture from another continent on the other side of the world is kind of frightening, I think. But you're welcome nonetheless. You are welcome.
I could see if you're part of the show and you're involved in it, you don't know. You don't know just how incredible it is to witness, a flat earther go against a non-flat earther, a Jehovah's Witness against a non-Jehovah's Witness. I mean, those shows were epic, man. Those were fantastic. I enjoyed every moment of it. And Casey, she is brilliant. I love her.
She really is.
She's fun.
She's really, really good. You got to have her on more often. All right. So what you're looking at right now is a beautiful portrait of the man with the plan, the man that changed everything. That is a bust of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was somebody that it's at least a name that we've all heard. And kind of like Alexander the Great, he has made history and he changed the course of history, unlike anybody before or after him. Well, I shouldn't say before him because Alexander did that. But we're not really here to talk about Julius Caesar. In 46 BC, Julius Caesar was murdered. He was killed. And it was by the Senate, and that was led by a man named Brutus. Now, as Julius Caesar was alive during the mintage of this coinage, he struck his own coins with his own face on it, and he was called a dictator for life. Dictator for life means that you can call the shots forever. And that's what he did. But there were a group of people that were against him, and that was the Senate. Julius Caesar represented the people of Rome. The Senate more represented at that time the aristocrats, the people with money. And one of the people on Julius Caesar's inner circle said, we cannot have a tyrant, a dictator like Julius Caesar ruling over everybody and calling on all the shots. And he had him killed. He plotted a grand conspiracy that everybody knows. All the senators took out daggers and started stabbing him. And that was Brutus. And Brutus was the one that led the revolt against Julius Caesar. Caesar didn't know about it, but he showed up to work one day, and let's just say he had a couple of knives stuck in his back. And if you go to the next coin, you'll see this was the coin that commemorated the 15th of March, the Ides of March, Eid Mar, as you see on the back. Eid Mar means the Ides of March, the 15th of March. Brutus's face on the left, the two daggers, which represent the daggers that stabbed Caesar, and the cap of liberty, which liberated all of the Roman citizens. And without getting too much into the history, the Romans were very much in a state of civil war at this time. And this was the coin that today is worth a lot of money. It's very hard to get this coin. There were very few of them struck because it didn't take long for forces like the nephew of Julius Caesar, Octavian, who would later be known as Augustus, to come after him and murder him. Now, that same dagger that he so boisterously represents on the reverse of his coin, Brutus held with him. It was the dagger that he killed what Julius Caesar called him, his son, right? Brutus was Julius Caesar's adopted son. This dagger that he kept with him, he killed Julius Caesar with. Now, the forces came down on him, and they were looking for Brutus. And he took that same dagger that he killed Julius Caesar with, and he was forced to stab himself and commit suicide with the dagger that he was so proud of, so proud to hold, so proud to show the people. He ended up having to take his own life with. And it's portrayed on the coin that he was so proud to have had struck. And here's that newspaper.
I didn't know that they would be so bold as to like put that on a coin. I mean, that's just kind of like in your face.
Propaganda. And remember, people would have, because there were divisions, there was civil war, people would have been on both sides of the aisle. So for the people that were on Brutus's side that said Julius Caesar was a dictator, he was a terrible person, right? People like Cato the Elder, if you read about him, that hated Julius Caesar. This coin would have meant liberty, just like the cap in the center of those two daggers mean. It meant liberty.
Brutus was not as coinogenic as Caesar was, though.
Not as coinogenic as Steve.
I've noticed he has a shorter neck than the other ones. Did you notice the other ones having a longer neck? By the way, what was Brutus's entire long name? It was like Marcus something, wasn't it? I mean, it was a very
Brutus
long
Maximus.
name, did he not? Brutus Maximus.
I can get you. They had three names. I can get them all for you. This is the imperatorial age, where I have my absolute weakest amount of understanding in. But you can see it says IMP. It says BRVT on the top, Brut. On the right, it says IMP, which is Imperator.
It was Marcus Junius Brutus the Younger.
There you
go. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Google.
If you'd ask me about, just go 30 years later and I can name them all. All right. And I think that there's one more, Brutus, if you go to the next one, just to show you the difference between conditions and in artistry. So,
Wow.
yeah, just as again, another example. And if you wanted to buy this coin today, how much do you think it would cost? I talked about
20
the
grand.
other pieces. Go up.
50 grand.
Double that.
75 grand. I'm just kidding. 100 grand.
You got it. About that. Starting at about 100 grand is one of these. If you wanted to
And
own
how many
one
do they
today.
have like that you would be able to buy? Like, are there a lot of them out there?
No, they come up every couple of years. Maybe one will pop up, and they'll be in different conditions, right? So, I mean, this is a rare coin. This is a rare coin that marks a rare event, and that it literally says on the back Eid Mar, which is the IED means 15th of March. So you already know that the Ides of March was something that was solidified in the Roman, mentality early on.
That's
And
wild.
this is what cemented it. This coin is what cemented it. And Brutus would pay for this coin with his life, and he would pay for it by sticking that dagger into his own heart.
That's kind of
It
poetic,
is
though, that
pretty
it ended
wild.
that way.
It is. I mean, it's beautiful. It's one of those things in history that here we have the evidence. We can see exactly that picture of history painted before us. And this is
there a coin
one of
out there
those
that
rare
there's only
examples.
like if there's only like either one struck or there's only one left in existence? Is there like just one coin?
Yeah. There are rare emperors where there are, we only have one example of a specific coin. Or emperors struck coins for their wives. And some of those wives were third, fourth wives or sisters where there's only one example known. And we don't even know if that example is authentic. There's all kinds of rarities that exist throughout. Keep in mind, with the Roman Empire, you're talking about 1,000 years of striking coins under hundreds of different emperors.
Wow.
And that's
They really
one of
did
the
for
things
1,000
that
years?
nearly,
These were
yeah.
really
I
struck
mean,
for 1,000 years. That's a long time making something.
Yes, it was. I mean, look, the Greeks, struck coins for 500 years, and then the Romans after them and before them. So you have part of being an ancient coin guy is I have to be able to look at just the almost the shadow of the face that's on a coin and be able to tell you who it is without reading any words, without seeing anything. I can recognize every emperor's face. That has ever existed on a coin. That's
How
part
strong
of
was their economy
being
compared to
part of
ours,
it.
though? I mean, because obviously the market changes, right? Economics changes, and over 1,000 years, how did they not have any volatility in the system that they have? I know it wasn't fiat money, but still, I mean, it
No, they
still
did. They
seems to
didn't.
be. They did have fiat money at the time.
Well, it would become that. And this is really getting into something a little more complicated than maybe we should, but it really did deteriorate, just like any money, just like any economy, right?
Yeah.
It would experience ups and downs, but silver was debased and debased and debased over time until it had gotten to a point where it was just a bronze coin with the silver wash on it by the time of like emperors like Probus and Aurelian, where they had perfected not making a silver coin, but a silver washed coin. And that technology was actually really impressive to making the people think that what they were getting was a silver coin, but it was just a silver painted or washed coin at that time. So it's something that they had to, just like today, we have to constantly adjust to. And it did eventually become a fiat kind of money, but gold was always worth gold. That's one thing that sort of carried on through the ages. Gold was always worth its weight in gold. You couldn't.
Let me ask you a question
make it
about Rome and the Vatican. Now, since the Vatican is its own kind of city state, were they producing their different money than the city of Rome, or back then were they kind of tied together?
I forget when they tied together because you're getting into the Byzantine Empire at that time, and it gets a little complicated. But I mean, the Holy Roman Empire, right, starts with, well, they say Constantine, but Constantine uh, still had pagan images on his coins. It wasn't until after Constantine. And then it was Theodosius II, I believe, Theodosius, that started minting all the money to have Christian symbols on them and things like that. That's maybe for a talk that I can do more gathering of information on for another show.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
That's something that really gets complicated. And here, I fear that it wouldn't be worth getting into the next topic. I think that if I ran through what we were to do next, which is the Jewish war against the Romans, and the coins that were struck, especially the Judaea Capta. People that are listening to this know what I'm talking about. The Judaea Capta coins. The Jews struck coins saying, "This is our freedom from the Romans." They struck in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 that said, on the coins it says, "For the freedom of Israel, for the freedom of Israel." And then the Romans came down on them, brought in all their legions, defeated the Jews. This is the last time the Jews had any kind of freedom at all. And they struck their own coins called the Judaea Capta series. It's the most popular series of Roman coins, which means the subjugated Jew series of coins. These ran from 66 to 71 AD. I wanted to get into that next, but I think that should be for another time. What do you guys think?
It's up to you. I mean, if you're, I'm ready to go. If you are, on with it. It's completely up to you, Rick.
Yeah, it's completely up to you. And I mean, how much stuff do you think it is involving? I mean, if something you make it about half an hour, that's fine too. Oh, yeah. We got plenty of time.
Yeah,
we do.
Go for it,
Would I be able to take a bathroom break for about 2 minutes?
No,
yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we can.
All right.
Go for it.
Keep the coins
and keep the coins like we do. We have the pea buckets here. It's like a mainstay.
Dude, I should have gotten one. I should have gotten one. That, and I need to turn the AC. I need to turn the AC up. It's miserable in my house right now. I'm sweating like a dog right now. All right, I'll be right back. I wish I could cover this. I'll be right.
We don't have piss buckets, people.
Yeah, that's not true. It's just like Steve talking about triangles and colors not existing. You can't take any of that stuff seriously. Don't exist. He says that to troll you. But if you're joining us now and you didn't catch the beginning, I'd like to go ahead and say again that next Thursday, as in a week from tomorrow, we will have Sargon of Akkad and Brittany Simon in a discussion on social justice and intersectionality. I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm not myself familiar with what intersectionality is, but I can't wait to learn. But that's going to be next Thursday at 8 p.m. Don't miss it. And then on Wednesday, we've got Richard Carrier joining us. These two are going to be debating at MythCon, and we're going to have them back to back. So really cool week next week. Steve.
Yes, sir.
Tell me something about
intersectionality.
Well, do you know what it is?
Yeah, of course I know what it is. Intersectionality. It's basically how different social groups interact with each other as based upon different sets of things like privilege, race, color, creed, and how certain things are more privileged and less privileged than others. And it's just they're in a relationship between all these different types of social categorizations that people get put in.
Interesting. I was going to ask you more specifically about simulation theory, because I want to put out there that I want to do a discussion on the simulation theory. I saw a video the other day that was fascinating, and I'd like to reach out to anyone out there listening. If you are someone that either follows this, believes this, knows somebody that does, please contact us. That's live at nonsectshow.com. That's NONSEQ show. But I want to go through it because I think it's fascinating. Steve, you want to kind of real quickly run through?
Simulation theory just basically posits that there's a high probability we're living in a simulation because the person who posits it has three different propositions, and one of them he thinks has to be true or more likely to be true, and he kind of like eliminates some of the other ones and leaving the only one left that somehow this is a simulation. I don't remember the three postulates, but they are doing experiments on it to test for what's called the granularity of the universe to see if this is a simulation, there should be certain hallmarks we would expect. And there are actually legitimate scientists working on this with actual experiments, but people actually conflate it with the holographic principle, and they're not the same thing. The holographic principle deals with entropy, and it deals with how much information is stored on a two-dimensional membrane on the observable event horizon. That stems out of black hole theory. Simulation theory is more of a dealing with, if we might be living in some kind of alien race or super sophisticated type system, which is simulated based upon these postulates that he had put out. But I don't remember the postulates though. I haven't looked at simulation theory in quite some time.
And there's people who are actually doing experiments on this, like for real.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Oh boy.
They're looking at the resolution of the reality.
Mm-hmm. I want to discuss it. I find it weird but fascinating.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's an interesting concept. I mean, I don't think a lot of people put stock in it. I certainly don't, but I mean, conceptually wise, it seems sound.
Yeah, it's almost
it's not
like the people who don't.
It's not like fringe.
It's just like the people who don't believe in the Sphinx. The Sphinx, 12,500 years old.
Oh, so I got no
problem with
that. I thought the Sphinx was around 10,500 BC my entire life, so I don't think that's that really weird to me.
Well, you got it right then. That's actually right.
Yeah, that's that. Well, I used to read Stitchin and Velikovsky and things of that, so maybe that's where I got that from.
Kyle, get a real Egyptologist on to tell you why it's not that old. You should have had that conversation with can't remember her name, but she's wonderful.
Dr. Bryson. I thought about it,
Bryce.
but ultimately I can't do that because I'm sure Dr. Bryson still wants to, not
have a job,
be seen. Yeah, exactly. Not be seen as somebody who, entertaining the fringe kind of things. I was going to ask her, but I don't want to put her in that predicament because, we love her to death and we want to keep having her come back on. And I don't want to put her in a spot where, where she has to feel like she has to answer that and, entertain. I know that it's fringe, but if people really investigated, people out there, if you really look at the evidence, I think we'll all come to the same conclusion. I have faith in you. Rick doesn't, but I do.
It's the only thing that disappoints me about you, man.
Otherwise,
I love everything about you. That's the only thing that disappoints me.
I'm agnostic.
No, I understand.
Yeah, I just want to be out there. I'm agnostic on it. For some reason, like I said, 10,500 BC. But
shut up, Steve.
I don't know enough about it to know one way or another. But I didn't think that was that fringe. But who knows?
Okay,
you should do a war. You should do a show on the Trojan War one time. By the way, that would be a really good show.
Cool. That would actually be cool.
That one I know a lot about, and it's fascinating. The Trojan War was something that we thought was not real for the last 200 and some years, and then we find the place where it took place, start digging it up, and realize, holy cow, everything that Homer said is materializing. It's a pretty amazing
Sphinx is too.
Awesome.
No, the Sphinx. We'll get into that another time. Go one more coin, Dave. Go one more coin past this one, and then we'll start at the next one. So let me just show you really quick. Getting back into things, right? Can you see on the right hand side? It says Augustus. This is after Brutus is killed and Octavian is triumphant. Augustus is the next emperor. The first emperor of Rome is Augustus. And right after Julius Caesar dies, right, a comet is seen overhead 7 days, 8 days, something like that. And everybody says that this is the soul of Julius Caesar, Divus, God, Julius, Divus Julius, floating above our heads. It's his spirit ascending into heaven. And his nephew, who would become the first emperor of Rome, who we see on this coin right here, struck a coin with that comet on the reverse, where you could see the words Divus Julius, the god Julius, and he became a god. That's how people became gods.
That is
so cool.
The detail work on that comet, like the flames up top that are kind of
yes,
going backwards.
That's what distinguished a comet from a star is the flames on top. That's a very good eye there, Kyle.
I put my glasses on.
Well, even without them on, you have very good foresight. All right. This is what I'm going to try and cover. And I'll try and make it fast, but this is an amazing story. This is one of my favorite stories in history. And I hope I can do it justice.
You can.
I'll start it like
this. Just to tell you real quick. We usually go 2 hours anyway, and you got a whole entire hour left before that's up. So you don't feel like
you really?
Have to, yeah, don't feel like you have to rush. We've only been going an hour, so you're not rushed.
Yeah.
God, I thought I was doing 3 hours already, and I'm just kidding. All right.
No.
The First Jewish War. I hope that I can do this story justice because it's really amazing. So here's what Rome is doing. Rome is taking over the world, right? I mean, it's got this way of military might about it that it starts to conquer everything around the Mediterranean Sea that belonged to the Greeks before. The Romans come into power. They start to they go from a republic to an imperial government where an emperor, one person, rules. And you go from Julius Caesar to Augustus, from Augustus to Tiberius, Tiberius to Caligula, then Claudius, and eventually you get to Nero. The year 66 AD. And if you go forward, let's see, this is coin, hang on. This is coin 14. We want to go to coin 18. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Go forward 4 if you can, Dave. That's Caligula. That's his mom, Agrippina. Right there. That's Nero. Beautiful. So this is Nero. And this is a big bronze coin. We've been looking at mostly silvers from before, but this is a big bronze coin. I've owned a few of these, and they are awesome. I mean, really awesome. And right at this time, you're starting to get something of a civil war going on in Rome. Nero is a person that doesn't help that cause, doesn't help that bring any civility to the world. He's a antagonist in a way. He believes that he's something special. He believes that he's something unique. And in a way, he is, right? They say Rome burned while Nero fiddled. And there is some truth to that because he saw himself as this artist. He was kind of like, if you're talking about the Egyptians, he was the Akhenaten of his time. He was something kind of special, but he went from being somebody loved to somebody absolutely hated. And he started demanding that in this weird little area, this little province that was called Judea, that he heard they sacrificed to an invisible god there. It's like, well, they should sacrifice to the emperor there. And this happened before him too with Caligula, but he at least had people, the priests in Judea, sacrifice on his behalf, right? And we're talking, here's the Nero that persecuted Christians, right? That burned them alive. He's the first emperor to be given credit for killing Christians for being Christians, which those Christians would have actually been Jews because nobody outside of Judea would have believed in. Anyways, Rome goes into civil war. Nero is forced to kill himself. But you have to hold on to all the provinces, all the lands, right? You have to hold on to Great Britain. It belongs to Rome. You have to hold on to Greece. You have to hold on to Egypt. You have to hold on to Judea. Judea is this small sliver of land. And you have this cult there that doesn't believe in all the gods that everybody else believes in. And it makes them sort of unique. If you would have told them at the time of Nero that the entire world would believe what the Jews believe at that time, they would have thought you were crazy. It sounds insane. Because you believe in the pantheon of gods. You believe in Jupiter. You believe in Juno. You believe in Apollo. You believe in the gods that have been known forever. Not just the one Yahweh, right? So, at this time exists in Judea, in Jerusalem, a temple in Jerusalem. Jerusalem being the capital of the Jewish faith. This temple was originally built by a man named King Solomon, about 1000 BC. It was destroyed 500 years later by the Babylonians, and then rebuilt not long after by, if you read the book of Ezra and Judges, it was rebuilt again 500 years before what the time of Nero is that we're at now is. Then there was a man named Herod that made it even grander and greater and built walls around it. And I'm trying to get to the story in a way that I won't take forever and also won't take away from the interest of it. So
I'm fascinated right now.
Thank you. So this temple exists where, if you read Leviticus, you'll see just how many laws there are just to sacrifice a lamb on an altar for Yahweh. The things that need to take place, it's incredible. The Romans laugh and scoff at this religion. They think, what kind of people can believe in nobody, in nothing, in an entity that cannot be seen? It's so foreign to them. It's so strange to them. But it's happening day in and day out. Then factions within the Jewish community of Judea, which is a Roman province, start to splinter. And Nero commits suicide. During that time, Rome is fighting amongst itself, and there are 4 emperors that are trying to come into power. But the main one that we're talking about is Vespasian, a would-be emperor. He's located in Judea, or he's sent to Judea from Great Britain. And if I'm messing this story up at all, or if you need to stop me, please do. Because it's not an easy story to tell, and there's a lot of...
I would have no reference by which to tell whether you're right or wrong.
Okay, so I could be fucking this up.
But totally, you'd be totally fucking up. I'd be saying like, yes, that's awesome. Yeah. But what is the name of this coin? Because people are asking.
Okay, so this is Nero with the not the Temple of Janus. This is the altar of Lugdunum. The altar of
Lugdunum. Okay.
Yeah, Lugdunum was actually Lugdunum, I believe, would later be called London. Yeah, it's a fantastic coin. That you see that thing on the on Nero's if you look at his chest, there's like a little globe right there.
Yeah.
A little dot thing right before the letter I. Yeah, that actually is that little thing like that means it was minted in the city of Lugdunum. If it doesn't have that, it was minted in Rome.
Gotcha. How did he commit suicide? By what means did he do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you remember how we talked about Brutus? And how Brutus took the dagger that he killed Julius Caesar with, and he stabbed himself with it. Nero almost did the same thing, right? I mean, there's a very famous scene where Suetonius, the historian, talks about how Nero had a dagger as well, and he had a slave with him, his beloved and entrusted slave. And he said he tried to get his slave to. He was condemned by the soldiers. Like, Nero is no longer a emperor of Rome. He should be executed. The best thing to do for him was to kill himself. He couldn't do it. He asked his slave to help push the dagger into his heart, which he eventually did with his slave's help. And his last words were supposedly, "What a great artist," or "What a wonderful artist dies in me." And that's how he died. It was suicide with help of the slave.
And a quick question about going back to Caesar and Brutus, just because I'm curious, and you might know or not, but is that dagger's like still? Do we know where that dagger is?
No, I wish we did, man. That would be fucking incredible.
Wow,
I wish we did.
What a thing from history that would be, wouldn't it?
We only have pictures of it on coins, man. And that's a lot of these things. Like this, the thing that you see on the back of this coin is something that existed. It was a gosh.
I can see
an Arc de Triomphe.
Triumphal arch. It's a triumphal arch. It at one time existed. It doesn't anymore. There are triumphal arches that still exist today from antiquity. There are on coins. Things like the like Trajan's column that were depicted on coins that still exist today. But this is something that is not around anymore. What you see on the back of this coin. So what happens is there's a revolt in Judea. And I'm trying to get all my thoughts and everything back together again so that I can focus on this story, because it's a great story and I would hate to do it injustice. Rome rules over the whole world. There is a little province called Judea. Nobody would have known, this is 30 years after Jesus dies, that this part of the world would influence all the religion of the world eventually, like it does today, right? The Jews revolt against the Romans. To do this is a death sentence, but they do it anyways. And they do it from north to south, from the Galilee, which is to the north, to Jerusalem, which at that time was to the south, or even further south, Masada. And they are able to defeat an entire Roman legion. Not only an entire Roman legion, I have it written here somewhere so that I wouldn't forget. They defeat something like 6 legions. They divide Judea, modern day Israel, up into 7 districts. And those districts all have generals. And they declare their own independence, which is where the idea of the Messiah comes from, right? The Messiah will bring the Jews independence from Rome. The Messiah will bring Jews independence from the Greeks before that. Or from the Babylonians before that, right? King Cyrus was seen as the Messiah, right? We call King Cyrus of Persia the first Messiah because he freed the Jews from Babylon and brought them back, and with his help built the second temple, right? Solomon's temple was destroyed. He built a second temple, and here we have the second temple ruled by the Romans. If I'm making sense, I hope I am. Now the Jews are saying, we want independence from Rome. So they kick the Romans' asses. I mean, what can I say? I mean, nobody defeats Romans. But the Jews did it. They somehow did it, and it was pretty incredible. And they decide to strike their first coin. They decide to strike their first coin that says, year 1 of the freedom of Israel. A new calendar year begins. If you can go forward 2 coins, you'll see the first right there. That is the first coin that the Jews struck. It's a big coin. It's a tetradrachm. It's a shekel, which is 30 of these were paid to Judas, but this is before Judas's time. On the left, in ancient Hebrew, this was ancient Hebrew even for the time it was struck. This was King David's style Hebrew. On the left, it says Shekel Israel, a shekel of Israel. And on the other side, and I can't see the other side, so I
expected
I'm not sure,
I expected a dreidel on the.
That's fucking good.
You know
man.
that song, Kyle? Can you sing that
you
song? I'll be impressed if we could. Do it.
Dreidel.
Sorry.
When it's dry and ready. I hate that song. We have way better, like especially Hanukkah songs. Like Hanukkah songs in Hebrew are incredible. And then you hear dreidel. It's like it just makes us sound horrible. We got better songs.
I know,
but
you guys actually have the best Hanukkah song by Adam Sandler. I think that one right there is the
Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song is good.
Festival of lights. Instead of one day of Christmas, we get 8 crazy nights. Yeah, I love that one too.
That sounds just like him, actually. That's pretty good.
That was pretty good.
I wasn't trying, but thanks. So, Shekel Israel, shekel of Israel. It says on the first time on the left side. On the other side is Yerushalayim HaKedoshah, Jerusalem the holy. And what this means for the Jews is something special. It's been hundreds of years. We've been under Roman rules for decades, and we're minting our own coins, and they're magnificent and they're beautiful. And it's, you can see on the left-hand side is a cup, right? An omer. And it's got the year, it's got the letter Aleph, which is A, year 1. They begin the calendar year that they have with it's kind of like saying we use the, the Christian calendar. Muslims use the, an Islamic calendar. This was going to begin a new calendar year, and it was year 1 right here of a new calendar. And it says year 1 of the freedom of Israel, Jerusalem the holy on the other side. Next coin.
And what is that on the other side, Rick? What is that in the middle on the other side?
It's called a lulav. It's sort of a think of it as a 3-branched pomegranate. You weren't allowed to have on Jewish money any idols or any faces or anything that offended God. So you had to keep it simple. So
you go
symbolically
with a pomegranate over a dreidel?
I know, right? Maybe those are dreidels, dude. They kind of look like dreidels if you if you cut them off the branches. Lulav. It is, but it's. You want me to look it up?
It could be 3 frogs looking at you. It's like 3 frogs.
No, it's
looking at you.
It's a sort of plant. Yes, it's a lulav. Yeah, it goes into 3 sides. You could put this, and it wouldn't be considered part of the what is the second commandment? Thou shalt not make any graven images unto the. Yeah, so there are certain symbols that you can get away with that wouldn't be considered graven images. What you see on here are things that would have been kept inside the Holy of Holies, right? The temple for God. These are symbols that were okay. Year 2 comes by. I mean, the Jews are literally kicking the Romans' asses. This is a bronze version. Go to the next one. Next coin. Yeah. So on the left, it's the same coin. But by the second year of minting it, which this says second year of the shekel of Israel, and it says Jerusalem the Holy. This is the period where they had defeated the Romans and kicked them out of Israel, and the best die engravers could come in and make something really beautiful and special like the year 2 shekel. It's the most common one because they felt the most confident at this time that they were free of Roman rule, and their best engravers could come in. Because if you'll see as it goes along, and if you look before, the cup doesn't look as beautiful on the other one as it does in this one. I've owned a few of these, and they're wonderful pieces. They're wonderful pieces. They don't look like anything special until, again, you read. It says Shekel of Israel. And it is hard to put into words just how special that would have been for the people living there. Because they're thinking, just like Jesus thought, we're living in the end times and the Messiah is coming. And here we have our own freedom. And here we are minting our own coins.
It's odd to me that after you fight for your freedom and independence and you think the end times are coming, the two things that you come up with to convey how celebratory that is a cup and a pomegranate plant.
A lulav. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is awkward. And I'm kind of like thinking in my mind right now, like, do I go to the even next stage where this revolt is ended and there is a second revolt 50 years later where Jerusalem is completely wiped out? But let me move on with the story in a more linear fashion so that I don't bore the audience. So here's year 2 of the revolt against the Romans. Entire Roman legions are absolutely defeated and scared back, and they can't come back until an emperor to be named Vespasian comes into Judea and starts to conquer the Jews and starts to take over the northern parts of Judea. And then his goal is to get into Jerusalem where these coins are minted. Next picture. Year 3. There's year 3. This is the same coin. Shekel of Israel, Jerusalem the Holy. Now we're going to see a degradation. Go to year 4. Go to the next coin. Maybe to you it doesn't look that much different, but to me it does. And
you can tell on the cup really bad.
Yeah, the artistry gets worse because fewer of them are made. Year 2 is the one where like it really looked great, but at this point you have Rome coming in, taking over more and more of Judea, and they are losing the ability to make coins. And by this time, coins are punishable by death if you own these, if you're caught with these. But this is still the resistance. This is saying the name Israel. This is saying shekel. This is not saying Roman denarius. It doesn't have the emperor's head on it. It's saying we are in charge of our own land. And this is our 4th year. Above the cup, there's 2 letters from right to left. Shin Dalet, which means Shnit Shat Dalet, which means year 4. Most historians will tell you year 4 was the last year, but they made one more. They did get to a year 5. Go to the next coin. This was the last one. There's maybe 20 something of these known. They were done and executed well, but this says Shin Hey, year 5, Shekel of Israel.
That's incredible.
This is where it gets messed up. I wish I could give you the long version because it's a beautiful story and anybody should look up the Jewish wars, the Jewish revolts against Rome. And I'm not doing it any justice whatsoever. But
yes, you are, Rick.
Well, thank you. But I don't feel that I am. I had much more in me, much more memorized that I thought I could give out, but I'm running out of steam. So I'm going to show you what happens next. And what happens next is absolutely fucking amazing. Because
there we go.
Here you have these group of people that have been persecuted. that have been ruled time and time again by different empires. And for a moment in time, 66 to 70 AD, 66 to 78, 4 years, and according to this coin, maybe a fifth, where they had the ability to call themselves Israel. And then that dream, that hope of independence would be forever blotted out until 1948, right?
Wow.
This was the last year that Judea or Israel could be called the home of the Jews. Because what comes after this is the greatest piece of propaganda of the Jews, followed by the greatest piece of propaganda that the Romans had ever put out. If you can go 2 coins forward, the Romans brought in. Sorry, go another one. Sorry, one more.
Wow.
These were the. Okay, right here. The Romans brought in what was their best general and who would eventually become their emperor, and that's what you see here. They defeated the Jews and made a huge deal of it. I'm not doing the story justice, but if you can see on the back of the coin, it says Judaea Capta, Judaea Captive. The Jews have been taken captive. On the left, you see a Jewish man with his hands bound behind his back, and a Jewish woman with her face in the position of what's called mourning, and the palm tree that represented Judea. And it basically means the Jews have been subjugated. They've been captured. They are our prisoners. They are bitches. And
what emperor is that?
That is Vespasian. I'm sorry. I should have gone over that. Vespasian was a general that during the Civil War, there were 4 emperors: Galba, Otho, Vitellius, Vespasian. They all fought one another. Vespasian was sent to Judea to take over this uprising of Jews. And Josephus, who we know as a historian, told him, "You will become the next emperor of Rome." Blah, blah. That was all laughed about, but he really did. And he brought Josephus, this emperor Vespasian, brought Josephus along with him to be the historian, to document everything that happened.
And what did Tacitus say about?
Well, Tacitus, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah,
Tacitus came.
It's a joke that Steve and I play back and forth, because we had a debate on here one time where the word was probably used. How many times would you say, Steve?
Oh God, Josephus Tacitus is like
it was used like
going back and
1,000 times at least.
You hear it in your sleep at this point.
Well, listen, Josephus literally went through all of these times. He was physically there from 66 to 71, 72 AD. He lived these years. First, he fought for the Jews, and then he was captured. And the emperor that you see on here, Vespasian, who came after Nero, I'm making a long story short, who came after Nero, he went with him and documented what happened between the Romans and the Jews. And after the Jews put out 4 or 5 years of these independence coins, right? We are Israel again. We are not ruled by a foreign army again. That all came crumbling down. And the reality of Rome hit the Jews like a 10-ton brick. And here is Rome telling the entire world, and this coin was spread throughout everywhere: Judaea Capta, Judaea Capta. The Jews have been subjugated. They've been captured. Their hands are tied behind their backs. Go to the next coin. And that's it. There you see another one, Judaea Capta. That is a Roman soldier, supposedly Titus, the son of Vespasian, who would eventually become emperor too, looking over a crying Jewish lady that has been subjugated. And that title, Judaea Capta, the Jewish captives, the Jews that have been subjugated, there has never been a series of coins that the Romans had put out in which they boasted more or had been more proud of capturing a people like they had those Jews. And this happened in 71, 72 AD.
What's the SC stand for, Rick?
As Senatus Consulto, the Senate Council. So this was money given out by the Senate, the Senate issued. But I should say, I completely forgot because I'm losing it here. But Vespasian, this emperor, and his son completely destroyed the temple of the Jews, and it has not existed since. So that was in the last battle that happened in Jerusalem. They burned down the temple that had existed for 1,000 years, and
wow,
it had been 2,000 years since the Jews had lived in Israel because they were all exiled. And there's a lot more to it.
Why were they able to? No, you're doing fantastic, Rick. Why were they able to overthrow Judea? Like, what happened that were the difference of Judea kicking ass for 5 years and then all of a sudden falling captive again?
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of not being able to tell properly, just because telling this story in a linear time can be difficult. But the Jews were able to put up a hell of a freaking resistance, man. And the Romans, even though they had the best armies, were not ready for what they would get. It was the Jews used brains, the Romans used brawn. It was one of those things. But ultimately, nothing mattered but the temple. The temple was everything. And if the Romans could destroy that, they could bring down Judaism. And they did do that. And this happened 30 years after Jesus, right? People talk about, oh, well, Jesus said that he would destroy the temple and then build it, in 3 days, which is an invention of later writers, because when Jesus lived, the temple still existed. But once they destroyed the temple, I mean, that was pretty much like, damn, you killed our religion and now we have to reinvent it. The fact that Judaism still exists today is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that not only it exists, but a form of it, of this little tribal religion that was looked on as this sort of nothing in its day, has taken over the world in one form of another or another. It's a pretty cool story. Sorry. It's a pretty cool story. And so this is where we end with this one. I can't go anymore because I'm absolutely I'm beat. There's more to tell on this one.
Sure. You know what that means?
Yes, they do.
You're gonna have to come back now.
You have to come back.
I'll be happy to. Any day.
I want to finish this this section, but I also after that I want to have you come back on Alexander the Great. I want to do a
that's my specialty.
Talk about him too. So guys, look forward to seeing Rick a lot more. I think that this whole this kind of topic, I think you keep saying that you aren't doing it justice and all this, but you really are. There's so many pieces to the story and so many moving parts that I mean, it's impressive enough what you know now, and you always know a lot more than you say on stream, because it's just a psychological thing. Like you're thinking too much about being on and saying everything right, and that happens to everybody. Very true. But that happens to everybody.
I feel like I did that. I'm sorry. I feel like I've done the story so little justice, and I've had it thought up in my head for the last few days, and I've not been able to convey the story in a manner that I wanted to, and in a linear time in which I feel that it should be told. But
Steve can tell you differently because he's watching what the people are saying.
They're loving it. So yeah, and I enjoyed it. I followed most of it within my purview, which is not in this area at all. But I found it fascinating. I'm really, I had no idea about all that stuff. But I do got to ask though,
sure.
And it's going to sound really weird, but is there any coins with Jesus' face on them anywhere?
That happens about 500-600 years after Jesus' death. Well, maybe you might even say
contemporary.
1,000. No,
nothing contemporary, like not in 33
No,
AD.
we didn't even know what Jesus. We had no idea what Jesus looked like until 500 years after.
We know he was white.
Yeah, we know he was white.
Big at the time, right? I mean,
this is my buddy Dan. He's helping me out.
Hey,
Dan. He's
Dan.
here all day for me. My moral support.
Nice to meet you.
So with Jesus, and like that's another person I know a lot about. I think that when you had discussed this one time, when you know a lot about something and you get to a point where it's like you can't, enough about that topic where you can't even explain it to people anymore. You know what I'm talking about?
Happens to me every day.
There's certain times where, I mean, I don't know a lot about any specific topic, but I have certain things that I have gone to school for, and trying to relate all that information in a very limited time is very difficult sometimes.
Yeah. So I think like I've overthought this, but there are many great stories. Alexander the Great is one. I could talk about Jesus and what what the truth is behind that, what we have as far as evidence. Things like I said, like the Trojan War. There's so many great stories out there. The if you want to look up something amazing, look up the what is it called? The Sicilian expedition during the Peloponnesian War. It's one of the best untold stories. The fact that a movie has not been made about that story is an absolute crime against humanity. It's that good.
I have a better idea.
Idea.
Instead of us looking that up, we'll just have you again come on and tell us that. I like operating in that way better anyway, because a lot of these things I like to come in, especially with guests like we used to do on the podcast. Like I wouldn't read up a lot on the guests that we were having come on. I would just kind of get the base information and then ask the questions, like I'm somebody that has no clue about what they're talking about. I think you get a better conversation going that way.
Sure.
From my end. So we will definitely have you back several more times. And actually, while I was sitting here during the stream, I am going to do a show probably in July. This is going to be a guilty pleasure of mine, but I'm going to find a pseudo geologist and a pseudo Egyptologist, and we're going to have the great Sphinx. And I would be honored if you would sit in on that and let them explain their views, and see if by the end of it you possibly changed your mind.
You're gonna have a Sphinx off.
I'm always willing to change my mind. I'm always willing to change my mind if you present evidence to me that is more convincing than what I already believe. I'm always willing to change my mind. So yes, of course, it'd be an honor, and I just hope I did you guys some kind of justice, and I would look. It would be an honor to be on. You guys are about to hit big numbers. You're about to be something bigger than I could even portray right now in any.
I feel like I need Rick around every day when I'm feeling.
Yeah, he's gonna be a PR person. Damn, exactly.
Rick, I'm in a bad mood. Make me feel better.
You guys, I'll be there for that too. But seriously, I mean, you guys are doing something really special, man. You guys are doing something really special, and I really appreciate you having me on. And I would like to finish it off, but I think that I've gotten to a point where I've just wore things a little bit thin, that I can rebuild the story up better if I leave them hanging.
That way they want to come back for a little bit more, right?
Leave them wanting more.
Absolutely. I'm not doing the Jewish wars any justice right now. I feel like I've just kind of. Well, I appreciate that, but I can do it much better. And maybe
fantastic.
We can finish it because there's more to it. There's a second.
And we are. We're gonna definitely do that, not without question. And I want to address what you said a second ago about how much you like the show. Steve and I appreciate that more than you guys know, and it's because we are doing what we're doing now because of you guys, like you, everyone out there, like people like Digital Hammurabi, all those guys that want to come back and want to kind of continue that conversation, because you are intricate pieces of what makes the show so great and what it is now. And you guys out there too that watch and comment, well, some of you that comment and send us messages of support. That's what makes the difference. And I don't think we could ask for a better, not only list of guests that we have coming on, but viewers as well. And we're only as good as our last show and you guys out there's opinion of us, so it matters. And we try to listen to everything that you guys put forth. I think if you go back and look, all of you out there that have made suggestions, we've at least attempted to contact them, if not got them on. A lot of the guests that we have come on are recommendations from you guys. We listen to all of them, no matter how crazy the idea or the guest or what they believe. We want to have them. The weirder, the better. I don't agree with a lot of people that we have come on here, but I think that it's important.
You don't have to.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk with them. Because everybody has a story, and I think this needs to be a place where it's told. And whether or not we agree with your story is irrelevant. We'll share our opinions in a lot of cases, but we just want to hear the story and have the discussion and put different opinions up there. I think that's what's needed nowadays. So there's so much infighting going on between different, extremes of this and extremes of that, and you just wind up doing nothing but responding all the time. And I want to have a conversation. I don't want to respond. I want to talk it out. And I think that's what we're trying to kind of build here, is a place to talk and not just respond. So thank you all.
That's beautiful.
That's
absolutely beautiful.
Agree. And if you guys want some more, just let you know. I'm going to throw this out there. You guys can go watch Cirrus and Ocean Keltory. They're going to be having a hangout on atheist bad arguments on Cirrus's channel. I'm going to put the link in the video in the live chat now. So after we go off air, go over and say hi to them from the NonSequitur show. Cirrus has been a big supporter of us, and we support his channel as well. So, but Rick,
absolutely, and Nightmare Fuel on Friday.
Yes,
Nightmare Fuel podcast on Friday. That guy is awesome. You'll love him.
Go wrong with
Nightmare Fuel. He's gonna be incredible. Atheism is unstoppable. By the way, Nightmare Fuel is awesome, man. You'll love him. You guys are the best. I really appreciate you having me on.
You are his biggest fan, I think.
Tell him what you said too.
Yeah,
I am. I love the dude. He doesn't even know it. He doesn't know who I am, but I love Reese.
He will now.
Maybe.
He will now.
Maybe he'll put me at the end of his videos like he does certain fans. I don't know about that.
Make a coin out of you. That's what Reese will do. Make a coin out of you.
A nightmare coin.
I'll make a coin out of him.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, Rick, thank you once again for Steve and David and myself. We will see you tomorrow for a discussion on why Hollywood is sneaking satanic symbols into movies, what can be done about that, and more interesting stuff to follow. Don't forget next week, next Thursday, Sargon of Akkad and Brittany Simon on social justice, and we will see you tomorrow at 8:00.
Ancientcoins@gmail.com if you want to reach me. That's my email address. Ancientcoins@gmail.com. Love you guys. Thank you.